Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Arthritis Action podcast. My name is Mark. I'm the area coordinator for the charity and also your host. Joining me today on the episode is Leah, our groups and events manager. Hello, Leah.
Hello.
And also one of our members, Katherine Jackson. How are you, Katherine?
I'm really well. Thanks, Mark.
Excellent. So today we're going to be discussing exercise and activity. So as we all know, exercise and activity is one of the most important things that you can do when you have arthritis. The evidence that we have clearly shows that exercise can help decrease pain, increase your general health, your mood, and also your mobility. Because in simple terms, if the muscles surrounding the joints are stronger, then they can support the joints better, which is invaluable when it comes to arthritis. So, I myself used to be a personal trainer. So, given the chance, I could probably bang on about this for days, but don't worry, I won't do that. So, let's get to you, Katherine, to start with, since you joined us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your arthritis, if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks, Mark. Well, I live in Edinburgh with my husband, Paul, and I work full-time, still based at home following the pandemic. And at the beginning of 2021, after a number of months of having really painful hands, which I thought was, because I'd be sitting typing more rather than being out and about in meetings and things, my hands were getting more and more sore, and I thought I thought it was maybe RSI. Eventually, though, I went to my GP, and who diagnosed osteoarthritis in both hands, particularly at the base of each thumb. And that was, in one sense, it was a relief, but in the other sense, I thought, oh my goodness, what does this mean? What is osteoarthritis? What impact is that going to have on my life? Because at this point, because I was doing a lot of work, as I say, with my computer and online Zoom meetings, team meetings, etc., and my hands were just not operating at all. And I was increasingly unable to do many things for myself, and I was losing my independence, even, dressing myself, doing up buttons, cooking, cutting up food. I just couldn't do that. So the pain was really excruciating and debilitating and draining. So I did what my very supportive GP advised me to do. I took my medication and attended physiotherapy. But me being me, and when I felt a little able to do so, I was keen to see what else I could actually do. So I proactively sought out local and national wellbeing and holistic and complementary supports, and involved myself in online groups, informative webinars and research workshops. And I was actually astounded as to how much support there was out there once I actually found it myself. And this is when I first came across Arthritis Action. And I joined the organisation and started to attend the monthly online evening meetings, which were an absolute godsend, and I found very beneficial, and it really helped me to feel less isolated.
Excellent, brilliant. I'm really glad that they've been helpful as well, and you've been an absolute pleasure to have on those online groups as well.
You.
Of course. So I guess the next thing to talk about there, as we are talking about exercise and activity, what are your thoughts when it comes to exercise and activity? Do you have anything in particular how it's impacted you?
Yeah, well, certainly for me, I have found it an absolute necessity, and it's been a saving grace. I have done exercise off and on over many, many years, probably more times off than on. So I had, and obviously during COVID, I used to go to community classes, etc., and all that sort of stopped as such, and I started to do a bit online. But then when the pain in my hands started, I just stopped, if you know what I mean. So initially, when my doctor had referred me to physiotherapy, and he showed me all these different exercises to do with my fingers and my hands. And I have to be honest, I was very cynical at the beginning. I thought, how can just moving my thumb to my forefinger to my middle finger, ring finger, pinky, etc., how is that going to help? However, thankfully, I was proved wrong. And after about 2 months, and it was 2 months, it wasn't overnight, the pain really started to decrease. I was really quite shocked, and I was getting much more flexibility in my joints. So that, because the pain was getting less, that almost gave me a and I don't think the physiotherapy and the GP said, really, you need to get back to some sort of exercise. Because at that time as well, I put on a bit of weight. So I started to do a lot more online. And actually, my community classes had gone online. So that's when I got back into doing a bit more exercise. And as I say, in terms of how it's impacted my life, I actually see exercise as important as brushing my teeth or drying my hair in the morning or put my makeup on, whatever. It really, really has to be it's almost like a real necessity. And I firmly believe that a combination of medication and movement and any other holistic methods, which obviously can be a bit of try and error, has ensured that I've continued to live as active a life as possible. And I am such an advocate for making sure that no matter how little movement you do, it can have such a huge impact. And certainly for me, I don't think I'd be sitting here today if I had not listened to my GP and my physiotherapist, and then been online, obviously, with the Arthritis Action groups, etc., and actually using a lot of the videos and attending the webinars as well, and just absorbing. Obviously, there's a lot of information to take in to begin with. It was, as I've said previously, it is not an overnight cure. It is all about just getting that into your daily, if you can, daily, if not weekly, and just take it very slowly. But certainly movement for me, any sort of movement is really important and has helped me, I would say, to certainly improve my arthritis. It's not cured it, but will have prevented me, because I'm obviously getting a bit older, I'm in late 50s now, and I think, the movement I've got in my, when I'm up walking and doing whatever, the joints, I think that will prevent me from perhaps arthritis appearing in other parts of my body at some point.
Thank you. I mean, there's one word I think that there was really, I'm glad you mentioned in that, was like movement. I mentioned that several times, because one thing I found that really deters people from exercise a lot of the time is the term exercise itself. It can be it can be quite a scary one, because people just, there's so many like associations. People think of being down the gym or lifting weights, or just like being a gym bunny, sort of in inverted commas, or something like that. And that's just then completely deters people from doing things, whereas activity or movement or just doing things can be just as important. Because if you don't like the gym, then that's absolutely the worst place for you to go to do your exercise or activity or whatever we want to call it. So for purposes moving forward, whenever I say exercise, I also mean activity, or I also mean movement. Whichever word you like best, I mean that one.
Yeah, and I think as well, you made a really good point, Katherine, of making exercise part of your routine. So the easier it is to fit into your daily life. And I think that links in with also what you were saying, Mark, about if you can do 10 minutes a day, that's great. And then if you can build that up to see what you've got time for. And there's so many different ways now to exercise. You can do it at home, you can go to the gym, you can go for a walk. And it's that routine, and making it so it's not something that you're dreading is really important.
Definitely. Katherine, how do you fit it into your day? As you said, it's part of your routine. So how do you manage to implement that then?
Well, as I say, obviously when my arthritis was diagnosed, and we were still in COVID at the time, and I really was missing my community classes, but I thought, with the advice of my doctor, I thought I've got to start something, and that's where obviously my community classes had gone online. So what I do now is I get up every morning. Maybe about an hour early. I still work from home, so I suppose I'm lucky enough to be able to fit that in. So in terms of my routine, I get up in the morning an hour earlier than I would normally do, and I'll do a half hour either stretching. I'll do perhaps if I do feel up to it, I'll do an online class, which is a little bit of aerobics. And going back to saying about a gym bunny, I am not a gym bunny, and I'm certainly not an athlete at all. And I'm not when I say I was not a huge lover of exercise before, I thought, oh gosh, the gym or going to classes. But actually, as Leah and yourself have mentioned, Mark, it's finding something that actually fits into your day, but that actually you enjoy. And that can be trial and error as well. So as I say, what I do is up in the morning, I do a half hour exercise. Now that, as I say, that could be a bit of aerobics, a bit of stretching. It could just be dancing about to some music. I then at lunchtime, because I get up and go out a walk for 20 minutes. And unfortunately, up here in Scotland, the weather can be extremely temperamental. So I'll try and fit in a walk, even if it's raining, as long as it's not absolutely blowing a gale out there. If it's just a bit wet, I will take my umbrella and I'll get out. And even just that can just helps me get away from my computer. What I had been doing for a while was actually setting an alarm clock, because I'm sitting and I get so engrossed in my work. I would actually, the movement bit, can't emphasize how important that is. I was actually setting my alarm clock for every hour and actually getting up and moving, just going up the stairs in the flat here and coming back down again, because I could feel my joints were starting to stiffen up. And although my arthritis in my hands, I could feel my shoulders, my arms, my back. And of course, that's all going to have an impact on my hands as well. So just getting up and making sure, I try and make sure my posture is good as well. And then, as I mentioned, I'm back to my community classes. I just go a couple of times a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening. And I have trained as a result, would you believe, of actually being diagnosed with osteoarthritis. I've actually trained as a seated yoga instructor for people with arthritis and MSK conditions. And I'm about to deliver my first 6-week block with a few volunteers from a local support group that I attend. So just even doing a bit of seated yoga. I've done yoga, sort of standing yoga on and off for a number of years now. And when I got the opportunity to actually train to do seated yoga, I thought, I'll take it. And I just love it. And it's very, very gentle, very relaxing. As it's all about stretches, all that movement, and just keeping the muscles supple and moving.
Definitely. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you about that as well, because I'm really good luck with the class as well. I hope they go really well. I'm sure that they will.
Thank you.
And flexibility is another really important thing as well that often gets neglected, I think, because I don't know, it's just, well, as with most things like this, it's easier to not do it. So therefore people tend to not do it. But I mean, as the old sort of saying goes, a longer muscle is a stronger muscle. So if your muscles are like flexible and able to move through a range of motion safely, you're less at risk of injury, which can make things just like daily activities or just anything that you do in life just a lot easier and a lot safer. And, you know, if there's nothing more, it can be a huge knockback if you get any injuries or anything like that from exercising or doing whatever it is you're going to do. Because, you know, if you've already got arthritis, you're already sort of like on a bit of an uphill gradient going anyway. So it's important to make sure that you are looking after yourself during that as well, doing everything as safely as possible, because the last thing you need is, you know, pulling a muscle in the middle of it all.
No, I think that's the thing. I think the flexibility. Recently, I had COVID for a couple of weeks, and then had a bit of a viral infection on top of that, and it really knocked me out of my routine. And so I didn't actually exercise. You're saying it's really, really quite easy not to do things. Mm-hmm. And I actually found how sluggish I was becoming, and so getting back into it again, the flexibility, and I even immediately, you know, just within a couple of days, how much better I felt, and actually more flexible, and how much better my hands and just my whole demeanour was, in all honesty.
So we mentioned earlier on about like the things like the stiffness and stuff, just when you've been sitting down too long, because that's another point I really love that you mentioned about how you set a timer to get up, because again, it's easy to sit down. It's like you don't have to do anything to do that. So, and you can get lost in stuff if you reading, looking at the computer, watching telly, whatever you're doing. Hours can pass by and you realize you haven't actually moved. But again, I'm just throwing out rhymes here today, but, you know, use it or lose it. If you keep using your muscles, then they will become better. But if you don't use them, then, yeah, as a result, your muscles get weaker. And if your muscles get weaker, as I said at the beginning, one of the most important parts is how stronger muscles can support your joints. So if those muscles are weaker, they can no longer support your joints. So, yeah, obviously I'm not talking about, you don't have to get hench. You don't have to, like, you know, look like Schwarzenegger or something like that just to make sure your muscles are really well supported. It's just about, like, you know, functional strength. I mean, like, what do you need to do? Because everyone's exercise will be like different for what they need to do in their life. Like, if you need to be carrying around gigantic weights all the time, then your training will represent that. But if your training is just for being able to move around in daily life, then your training should more resemble the things you need to do that. So it's important to make sure you tailor it individually to you and to what you enjoy as well.
definitely. And I think as well what you were saying, Mark, about where you are, if you are sitting for long periods of time. And I think if you are new to exercise, if you're just getting into it, there can be a fear of movement, of thinking, oh, will it make my pain worse? But I really agree with what you said, Katherine. Once you kind of get into that routine,
Yes.
I'm exactly the same. When I don't do any yoga, or I haven't been for a walk that day, I feel really bad. And it's only since having more of a regular exercise routine that I've noticed that as well, because it just felt normal before to feel a bit stiff, and then you do get moving, and like you said, the benefits really are great, but it's kind of almost having to find that out, and starting small and doing a few stretches can really help. So yeah, definitely agree with your quote, Mark. If you don't use it, then you lose it. I think that's a really good one. And there's so many things. I think we get a lot of phone calls from the public or from other members, and I think when we kind of say do exercise, they'll be like, oh, that means I've got to do a 45-minute hike or whatever. And we're just really keen to get across that you don't have to do that. And I think we've just been conditioned to think that exercise has to be strenuous, or it has to be boring. Like, you go back and you think of PE at school and people would dread it. And I think it doesn't. I think there's so many different options that are open to people, and that's really great. And we've got, if you are new on your exercise journey, then we've got loads of great resources to help with that. And we also encourage people to talk with their GP, or to talk with a physiotherapist as well, because there's lots of options, because it can feel like a bit of a minefield when you're just getting started.
Definitely. Another thing to add as well, which I think is really good with exercise, is again, like, say, the length of time that you spend doing it. Because as you mentioned, Katherine, you like to do yours, like, say, first thing in the morning, and then you do your like a good 30-minute spell or something like that, which I know that's another thing that can seem daunting to some people, is to exercise for such a prolonged period of time. So a good example of what this is again from one of our groups, something that someone mentioned that they like to do, is that they do it in bits throughout the day. So they love to dance. So when they're boiling the kettle, they'll turn the radio on and just like whack that up, and they'll just dance away in their kitchen for like 5 minutes while the kettle boils. But because of of the classic British love of having cups of tea constantly throughout the day, that means she's doing this like 5 times a day. So therefore, like, what would have been like, oh, that's only 5 minutes of exercise, it's actually like, it can be like 25 to 30 minutes of exercise when you add it up throughout the day. So that it's about figuring out what's going to work best for you as well. Like, if doing it all in one go works best, great, do that. But like, if you're just breaking it up into little bits, and again, like I said, dancing around your kitchen isn't necessarily what people think of as exercise, but it absolutely is. You move your whole body while you're doing it, and it's just something that she enjoys as well. So yeah, it's just so important to do, and it's make it, again, as I keep sort of saying over and over again, I'm sure everyone's bored of me saying it, make sure it's like suitably tailored for you, specific to you, like, because it's the way you'll get the most out of it when you do it.
Definitely, because I mean, added to that, all I said, the 30 minutes in the morning, that's when I work from home. And obviously, as I know we're now, we're almost out of COVID, but as we're coming out of COVID, my work is such that I am getting out a bit more now. I have meetings to go to, I've travelling to do, because I cover quite a big area with my job. So to actually then think, I've got to get up even earlier because I'm leaving even early to actually travel in the morning, I will get up just and do 10 minutes of, say, a bit of stretching or movement, because I think I don't want to put myself under more pressure that I've got to set the alarm to 6 o'clock, because that's almost out my routine. And I thought, if I do that, then as much as I would feel a lot better, I think, no, I'll plan ahead, and I think I'll do 10 minutes, I'll do a bit of stretching, and then when I come in, or I'll make sure I have a nice walk when I'm out, as long as the weather's okay, or as long as it's not so long blowing a gale here. But that's the bit, absolutely. I really, really appreciate what you both said there, because I think, as much as I'm advocating, yes, the routine, but then routines change, and I think that you have to be flexible. And I found that quite difficult, because I'm quite a routine. When I get into my routine, I don't like my routine to be changed. But I've realised with exercise, the benefits of it, I need to be more flexible in my head with my exercising and chop it down throughout the day when I can't, if I'm having to travel, or at weekends, for example, if I'm away for a weekend or whatever, I'm meeting friends or things, it can't always be that 30 minutes in the morning, but I make sure that 30 minutes is dotted about throughout that day, even if it's just a bit of movement, and actually doing a bit of walking, going to walk rather than taking the bus somewhere, or walking that wee bit extra at the other end, or the next day thinking, right, I'll do my 30 minutes today. I can manage to fit that in, but tomorrow I can't, but I'll just do 10 minutes of stretching or whatever when I can fit it in.
Excellent. That leads on quite nicely, actually, to something else I wanted to ask. Because you mentioned it briefly at the beginning, so about like the pain you had in your hands and how that affected your exercise. I was wondering if you could go a bit more into it, like especially now that you've got like things like your routine, things that work. How does pain come into it now? Like, do there still days when you can't do stuff, or?
Yes, there are. I mean, as you say, I'm still working from home, and as part of my support, I actually got equipment via Access to Work. So I've got voice recognition software, I've got an ergonomic keyboard, I've got a special mouse, I've got smart pen, I've got all this equipment it's really, really incredible. And as a result of that, I'm not having to use my hands as much for my work, as in typing, which was a lot of the activities that I do are either Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, or it's all email. So I find I can get where our hands are feeling okay because I've exercised, whatever, and I think, I'll just type that. Not that I'm a touch typist, but I think I'll type, and then I know the next day I should just have used my Dragon software or my ergonomic keyboard or whatever, and not done as much. But what I do is I've got my support networks in place that I know when my hands do start to get sore as a result of that, it can almost wipe me out. Very much so. The pain can start to really gnaw. It's a real gnawing pain. And if that's the case, what I do, I've got my little hair bands that I use, that I move my finger and my thumb, and that almost really, really does help. As much as it's pain, it's painful when I do it. The more I do it, the more flexible and more the pain reduces. I also had my medication had come down a bit, so I actually maybe up my medication very slightly on the days that I do have quite a bit of pain. But what I can't emphasize enough is actually listening to your body. And as much as my legs can still work even when my hands can't, but the effect that can have, the draining effect, the gnawing, and sometimes feel quite nauseous. And I think I just can't, there's no way I can do that exercise today. There's no way. So what I'll do is I'll revert back to, I'll sit and I'll do some relaxation techniques, or, on the Arthritis Action website, you've got your distraction techniques, videos and things. They are a real godsend. I will actually do that. So then I'm actually relaxing and exercising or moving my mind more in a good way, to get these positive and to try and detract from the pain. But if I think, well, if the pain's so bad, let's get out the flat and just have a walk. Go out for 10 minutes, go out for 20 minutes. So it just depends. And I suppose the main thing is not to overdo it, not think, I'm in pain, I better do that physiotherapy exercise, I better do that, I'll feel better after it. But really, really, really listen to your body. And sometimes I will push myself, but then my body will say, no, Katherine, that's too uncomfortable, stop. And so that's so on a daily basis, I will ensure that I do what I feel able to do. Yes, sometimes, Mark, you have mentioned it's very easy not to exercise, but I know I'm repeating myself now, but I cannot emphasize enough how much exercise has changed my life in terms of feeling so much better, and just making it don't think, you've got to go to the gym, or you've got to do 30 minutes, I've got to get to community class, I've got to be using the weights. No, it's just movement. As you say, it's just movement. And I cannot emphasize enough how much just moving has, I wouldn't say it's too melodramatic and it's saved my life, but it's actually, I would never have thought I'd be sitting here 18, 20 months from where I was that time ago to think I'm actually okay, because I was sitting here in tears with my hands in splints, thinking I was never going to work again, I was never going to be able to drive, I was never going to be able to cook or eat myself, I was going to be so dependent, and I'm such an independent person, and I thought, my life's over. But actually taking just a step back and getting the proper and the support networks in place and doing that exercise has been an absolute godsend. Has been fantastic. It's been a saving grace for me.
I think that's amazing to hear, Katherine, because it really does show the power that exercise can have. And I think what we say, because it's something that's not an overnight fix, and it is something that you've got to persevere with, and that in itself can feel quite it's difficult to hear, isn't it? It's something that you've got to keep forcing ahead with, really, and finding what works for you. And I think that definitely shows it's a case of don't give up, but a case of if you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, maybe change it up a bit and kind of work through that trial and error process. But I think that's a really great point that you make.
I mean, you've already answered like pretty much everything I was going to answer, but just naturally, which is excellent. So good job on that one. But if you could give advice to someone, like say you back when you started, what advice would you give yourself now, looking back on it?
I certainly would say at the beginning, baby steps, absolute baby steps, and not to panic. I certainly, when I was first diagnosed, I thought, oh my goodness, as I said, oh my goodness, what is this going to be? What's my life going to be like from now? Is it going to get worse? Is osteoarthritis suddenly going to take over? And I'm not going to be able to do things. So I would say, certainly my GP, I'm very lucky with my GP. She was very, very supportive, and I was diagnosed very quickly. And I just listened to my GP, and at the same time went to physiotherapy, and just baby steps. And even although, I actually found the online resources via Arthritis Action fabulous as well. If you can't get up and do, 10 minutes walking or whatever, or 30 minutes exercise, to go on the resources that are there, whether it's the video resources or the PDF on the exercises, and actually concentrate on the part of your body that is affected by osteoarthritis, and just do these small movements to begin with. And I think, as Leah, you've said, keep going. It's that bit about keep going. I cannot emphasize enough, because, and don't get me wrong, there were days I got up and I thought, oh, no, I just don't have the energy. I don't have the motivation. I was really down because at the time I was off work and I thought I'm going to get back to work. But I thought, no, keep going, just do that. And just doing these very small movements. And then when I started, and find things that you enjoy doing. It could be trial and error. I never thought for a minute that I would become a seated yoga teacher. Within 15, 20 months of being diagnosed. But it just came into my lap and I thought, yeah, I'm really into that. And as it was, here I am teaching it now. There's some exercises I used to do. Like I used to do like HIIT, high intensity
interval training.
Yeah. And some days I will do that. The class I do go to, it's not too intense, but I think it's some of the movements will actually aggravate the pain just with the movements in my hands or my shoulders. If that happens, don't do it. Do something else, and just try and find something that you enjoy. And I say that can be trial and error, and it can take a bit of time as well. And as already mentioned, try and build it into your day. It might not be every day, but say every couple of days, and just make a decision. As I say, recently when I wasn't that well, I really thought that I need to get back to my exercise, and it's actually making that decision. Right, I'm going to do this, and without thinking, oh yeah, that I'm going to climb Mount Everest by the end of the week. Don't have too ambitious a goal. Just start very slowly. And just do even 10 minutes or 5 minutes even, going on the Arthritis Action website, seeing the exercises there and just doing that. And then gradually build up. And I must admit, the effects for me, apart from feeling more flexible, better mood, I am sleeping so much better. It's unbelievable, the benefits I've had. And as I say, recently when I wasn't well and I was starting to not sleep very great at all, but as soon as I got back to my exercising, it was almost immediate. Within 2 or 3 days, I was sleeping like a log. But it's I think the main thing I would say, don't over push yourself. Listen to your body. Don't over push yourself. But it really, it's been a real game changer for me in terms of making sure I do a bit of movement every day.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Katherine. So I suppose you have already kind of done this job for me as well, Katherine, but lots of our resources that are available. So Leah, would you like to tell us a little bit about what's available on our website for people?
Yeah, we've got loads of different resources. We've got the exercises that Katherine mentioned. So they're kind of like little cartoons that cover different parts of the body. And they're really great because they let you kind of build your own routine. So you can do it as many repetitions as you like for as long as you like, and you can pick and choose. So depending on what areas of the body you want to exercise. And we also have some printable exercise sheets if you find that easier to follow. And we've also got a whole host of different self-management videos. So we've got if you kind of want something to help you relax or to unwind if you've had a busy day, because I think it's really important to remember we need to give ourselves time to rest as well. Like exercise and rest are linked together. We do have some different techniques and exercises you can work your way through. We've got so many different things, and it's just giving it a go. You're more than welcome to do that. You can just Google Arthritis Action and visit our website and go from there. And if you do, Katherine mentioned about being part of groups. I think that can also be a really great way to stay motivated and share hints and tips with other people, because quite often they might have something that you've not thought of, like starting small, working your way up, or a referral pathway in your local community. So we run those online, and they're a really great way to meet other people living with arthritis who might be going through the same things as you, and it's a great way to help each other. So all of the details about those can also be found on our website.
Excellent.
If I could just come in just on that, Leah, I when it came to the online meetings, I can honestly say they were such a lifeline for me during my diagnosis, and I've learned so much about, not just osteoarthritis, but actually hints and tips from other people as well. I would highly recommend, attend if you can, attend these monthly meetings, because they have been fantastic, and I've got to know so many people. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you very, very much for all your support, and all the other members who've been involved as well.
Oh, thank you, Katherine. That's really great.
And you also plugged that way better than I did.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
The address for that, though, for anyone wanting to go to the website is www.arthritis.action.org.uk. And if you'd like to send us an email, or you have any questions about the podcast, or you'd like to suggest any topics, or whatever you want to talk about, really, just feel free to let us know. You can do that at podcast@arthritisaction.org.uk. So thank you very much, Leah.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Katherine, for your time.
Thank you.
Great. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.